Hello, welcome to another interesting episode of Footprint. We started one episode with Wing Commander Sogbojor, and today we are here to continue with that one and see how it all panned out later. Now he became an Air Force officer pilot, fighter pilot, so to speak, and back in Ghana. And so we still have him here to talk about how he went through the ranks and his later involvement in politics and all that. Welcome again, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you came back at the time Nkrumah was still the Prime Minister?
President.
The President. Okay, President, yes. And
Overthrow.
but you were Nkrumah boys.
Yes, we were, but once in uniform, you took instructions from your superiors.
And that was it.
That was it.
So you once talked about how there was a coup d'etat and you had a chance to actually stop them, and you did not.
We did not because we didn't get instruction to stop them.
Okay, so the coup succeeded.
Yes.
And Nkrumah was overthrown. He thought he would come back. He never came back. He was giving addresses from Guinea and other places, and gave some people hope, which never became a reality. Did that make you sad?
I would have said no initially. But after certain courses maybe one attended and our perception was opened, some of us, of course, felt that it wasn't right for it to have been done.
At the time?
At that time. But in uniform, you don't have a chance to go and tell your commander, I think what you are doing is wrong. You obey instructions. And the instruction we had to obey it and execute it to the nearest point.
Okay.
Military DMSF failures.
So this coup d'etat in '66 was led by General Frifa and Kotoka, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you know them before?
Yes. I knew Frifa, I knew Kotoka.
How close?
Frifa, to be honest, was at the time of the coup, I think for military records, I'm enlisted for administrative discharge, because the conduct of becoming an officer is paramount. Once you are accepted, you go training and qualify as an officer, you are bound by certain tenets on behavior pattern. Now, if you don't fall in line, the military can give you administrative discharge.
What does that mean?
That you've been kicked out from the military. Yes.
So,
and at that time, we also didn't know, we were too young, that the Kotoka was facing summary trial for something. So if you look at history, I'm not here to judge, but looks at the prime principal architects of that coup were people who could have been taken out from the police and the military. Because we got to know things were lying in front of the president, but it was, let me go and come back. You know, and in such matters, it's easier to find a disgruntled person to collude with to take an action.
Very easy.
Very easy, because the person knows that I have one foot in here, one out. So why don't I carry it out and maybe I'll become a better person?
Okay.
I think that was the role. With the troops, there was nothing they could do. Their commanders were taking them to war. And they were going to war, so you can't blame them.
Right. So when they succeeded in this coup, they brought in General Ankara.
Yes.
To be head of state. Why would they bring him in?
I think they needed some grace.
Legitimacy.
Legitimacy, you said it. And Ankara was a very well respected soldier So maybe
of high repute, yeah.
high repute, and he was also out of the military at that time, I believe, because there was, I think, crisis about leadership of the military. I think maybe it wasn't going his way. Because at the time of the coup, he was not the chief of defense staff.
Okay.
But they brought him from outside to push him on. Because generals don't retire. A general can be brought in and out at any time.
Okay. So they ran the country for a few years.
But once they've succeeded and they set up a government, then they actually disengage from the military.
Okay.
Okay, the military will still run as an institution. Then they will run as the civil campus of the country, which doesn't involve the military per se. It involved them, and that's why they got civilians to go with them to form the government.
Yeah. But 66, and when they started, there were a few coup attempts in reaction. Is that correct?
After 66, there wasn't any major reaction. The reaction which came was the abortive coup of 1967, in which Captain Arthur and Lieutenant Yeboah were executed for failing to execute their plan of coup d'etat.
Tell us about this aborted coup. We were told that, or we are told that it started from Ho in the Volta region. Is that correct?
Yes.
What's your own account of this, if you remember?
Military-wise, I've come to accept and I've seen the methodology Captain Arthur used to get troops from Ho to get to Accra. And it's been discussed in many military institutions. If you look at his selection and maintenance of aim, which is one of the fair principles of the military when you are going to war. You select an aim and maintain and achieve it. For soldiers who have come all the way from Ho, crossed the security points, crossed the bridge, came to Accra, and those days, the prime areas were capture the broadcasting house, capture Dosu Castle, and that was it. The country was down. And they were able to achieve them. They were able to capture the broadcasting. They were able to capture the Dosu Castle for some few hours. So military-wise, they were able to achieve their aim. I think what let them down was that they didn't get support. Like other units in Accra could have gone to join them, but they didn't. And of course, they couldn't hold the fort with the number of soldiers they brought in, so the coup failed. The attempted coup failed. That's why it became abortive.
But some people died.
Yes. Yes. The chief of defense staff was General Ike Kotoka. Virtually the first arm in the coup against Nkrumah was killed. And
they managed to kill Kotoka.
Kotoka was killed, yes. He was shot, I think, in the armored car. That day in question, we had been working to, at the same time, the fighter squadron. That there was an insurrection, which is standby to go and stop it with our fighter planes. And we've been taken out of our rooms about 5 a.m. and taken to the Air Force Base. And when you are on red alert, sometimes if you take the two-seater plane, one is sitting inside, one is down, waiting. The word go boom, you go, just go. So from 5 o'clock to about 10 in the morning, we hadn't got the picture clear. But suddenly we realized that the coup had been foiled. But they couldn't trace the main architect of the coup against Kwame Nkrumah, which was General Kotoka. So they were looking for him all over. We at that time started grumbling that we had not been fed no breakfast. So we were sent, and it was my car with 2 of my colleagues and my squadron commander. We crossed the runway, because there was a hotel at the airport called Lisbon Hotel, to go and buy sandwiches for the rest of the crew. It was when, after we crossed the runway and we went on to the outside of the airport, we found some few people standing by something. So somebody stopped us. That was a dead man lying there. So we stopped the car to go and find out who was there. There were 3 policemen there, and they couldn't tell us who was there. But when we got there and turned him over, because it was face down, and we could see the bullet holes through the back.
Oh.
It was when we turned him down, we realized it was General Kotoka. So we quickly had to come back and tell them that we found the body of Kotoka.
At this time, he was a CDS, right?
He was a CDS, yes.
Wow.
Living in Jubilee House. So I think in the morning, the report we got, he was seized from, he was then wearing half-clothed military officer, you know. They got him up in the morning, and there was a little bit of struggle, and they suspect that they pushed him to the armored car and shot him, and dumped his body exactly where, we don't have the statue anymore. There used to be a statue of Kotoka in front of the airport. Yes, yeah. Exactly where the body was. Unfortunately, those of us who found the body, our names were not mentioned anyway. That's the way.
So that's your own account of this abortive. And what happened to Atta and Yeboah?
They were court-martialed and tried.
Under General Ankara?
Atta, Yeboah, and Osepoku.
Oh, there was a third person, Osepoku?
Osepoku, yes. He was not killed. He was a junior officer at that time, so I think his plea that he didn't know what was going on, he just followed instructions.
Mm-hmm.
He was a bad thing. Yeboah is the one they suspected to have shot Kotoka. And Atta was their leader.
Mm-hmm.
So he should take the blame. So
where was Atta from?
Atta is a Fanti man, but he was based in the Rocket Squadron in Ho.
Okay. The Fanti man. He was motivated to kick out General Ankara and Kotoka.
During the trial, we found out that it was the same issue which got Buzia out. Oh, sorry, I didn't count Buzia much later on. It's always a neglect of soldiers when a coup comes. The officers are okay, soldiers are neglected.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the issue.
The whole issue. Anyway, so after Yeboah fiasco, life continued.
Yes, life continued. And General Ankara found himself embedded with some Nigerian called Francis, the Nigerian name is not coming, on the bribery issue. And Ankara accepted having taken the bribe. Therefore, he had to step down as the head of state.
Mm-hmm.
Step down as head of state.
Okay, so he stepped down voluntarily?
Yes, as a head of state.
Wow.
Then at that time, Kotoka too had been killed. So Afrifa became the head of state.
But things have changed.
Why?
Nobody is going to step down anymore in Ghana.
Well, the circumstances.
But nobody accepts, man.
Of course.
We once upon a time heard something about Abacha and a certain head of state. I mean, people don't admit these things.
Our situation here is, why do you want to leave who gives you bread and butter? What are you going to eat afterwards? Therefore, we are not sincere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this morning or yesterday, we heard about the PPE guy being sacked. After he's been probed by Track, that certain amounts of money found in his account, he couldn't account for them. To me, did they act alone? What about the board members? Did they check their accounts too? But I don't think that's the interview we are doing now.
Well, but that's nation building. That's a conversation.
It's a sincerity.
Yeah.
If people will be sincere. When this guy came out, we have people who came out staunchly to defend him.
Mm-hmm.
Staunchly. I remember Kennedy Acheampong made a whole press statement about him, about his innocence. But today, look at the evidence which came from Chad. As a result, the president asked him to step down.
Mm-hmm.
This is it. We are not bold enough to say, look, Nigerians are a bit different. He will tell you, take your job, I'm going. No Ghanaian will say, I'm a minister, I want to go because I've been tainted or bribed and I have not been sacked. I've been saying it before. We have system, we have the laws, but the implementation of the laws we have is a problem.
Okay, so he resigned, yes.
Yes, he resigned.
And Afrifa took over.
Yes.
And then we got back
we went to elections.
Elections again.
Yes, and then the CPP side of it, CPP have been banned. That it was even a crime to be seen holding Nkrumah's picture or his book. So the Nkrumah group could not use CPP to go to the elections. They used Dr. Liman. What was his party?
No, Liman was much later.
Yes, I'm saying that after
Yeah.
the previous period, then we're going to elections.
Yes. Liman was 79.
Election was when Buzia won.
Yes.
Buzia then won the elections against now. That's Progress Party won it. And Buzia then became, the constitution had been changed. So Buzia became prime minister, strictly speaking, as the English model. And Akuffo father was the ceremonial president. But the power was not in the president, but it was with the prime minister.
Yeah.
But a coup had to come and Buzia had to be taken off for another military regime, the NSC led by General Acheampong.
At this time, you are still in the Air Force.
I was still in the Air Force. Yes.
Middle level officer.
Squadron
very
leader.
Exposed. Oh, squadron leader, senior. Were you involved in that coup, or did you know about that coup d'etat?
I've not said this anywhere before, but today maybe I'll say it. I think 3-4 days to that coup, one evening, I was invited by Major Agbo to Tema. It was 4 battalion. I just was friends. We used to go to Keteke and other places together. You know, you all ones don't know Keteke, but Keteke was one of the leading nightclubs in the country. So a casual visit. I was there when Salome came. A couple of other officers came. Then, as we're chatting, suddenly we move into how Buzia was demeaning the military. And the military had to do something about it. It's from there that I realized that there was something coming up. Now they gave me a job to do. My job was to go to Takoradi. That's why the Air Force had the bulk of its planes, the transport ones, based in Takoradi. And my duty there was to try to convince the pilots there that in case anything happens and they are wanting aeroplanes to go and bring soldiers out of Accra, they should not go. I had no choice once this was revealed, and I did not want to go and report anything. So I went to Takoradi. But I think my colleagues there were not too smart, because instead of living in Osset Smith, I lived in Atlantic Hotel. And I invited them for dinner. They came, we had drinks, we had food to eat. Then of course, the topic also came in how the military was suffering. It was being, I don't know, it was deliberate. Because they want to stop military involvement, they actually started, starving the military of certain equipment. They have no fuel to move their trucks. Their uniform clothes were not coming. So they were all a bit not too happy with Buzia. So at that time, I don't think anyone would have raised a finger. And of course, they didn't know what was coming. And I was in Takoradi when the coup happened. And one way or the other, my Air Force Commander, General Ashton, also appeared there. We had to come back to Accra. And we can only come back by air. So they got us a Beaver aircraft, an 8-seater aircraft to come to Accra. being flown by another very senior officer. And when we got to Winneba, he had to report to Accra that we are coming in. And the guy came back and said, you cannot land in Accra. So he just said, but what, are we going back to Takoradi? And I said, no, sir, let's continue. And he was continuing, since I really, let's go. Keep descending. So we descended. They asked for clearance to come and land at Accra. We got the same reply, you cannot land in Accra. So I came on the air and asked who was talking to us. So they gave me the code, and I also gave them a code, and he said I should wait. Came back and said, you are clear to come. Because I had a code they're giving me, you know, knowing that if this thing happens, how to clear the runway for us to come. So in fact, the captain of the aircraft was shocked. He said, Pat, how did you get to know? So let's go. So we came. When we got there, they had blocked the runway with timber and some few things. They cleared it, we came and landed. I normally don't talk about it. So that's the little role I played in that crew.
But you never got yourself involved beyond that?
No. After that, I was posted to the castle where I worked, in the castle of Acheampong, an AFRC, the NLC government.
In 1970?
From 73 to 75.
Okay.
Then I had to leave and go and do, I was a pilot, but I changed to come into administration. Okay. So I had to go to Royal Air Force College in Cranwell, UK, to do my admin training. So I left in 75 to do the training, and I came back. Okay. I didn't go back to the castle. Cranwell. Cranwell is a technical school. The Cranwell is like the Air Force College.
Okay. I know about Cranwell. Okay. All right. So, anyway, we are enjoying the stories here with Wing Commander Sogbojor. We'll take a short break, and then when we come back, we want to know how the Acheampong government performed from his perspective. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the program. This is Footprint on City TV, and I have Wing Commander Patrick Sogbojor here. Now, Akuffo Acheampong is the head of state, and there's another military coup, and there's excitement, activity all over the place. The politicians some of them had been put back in jail, and all that you can remember. No, so having cleared the path, if you like, in Takoradi, but Akuffo Acheampong himself had been in Takoradi, was based in Takoradi before the coup
Long before, yes.
Before the coup d'etat. So he had been moved to Accra then.
As a brigade commander.
As a brigade commander. And then he did the coup. Did you know him personally before the coup?
I wouldn't say intimately, but I knew him. Fortunately, I can reckon myself to have been a very young and likable officer within the military, you know, and it was like that. I didn't get myself in trouble, but I wouldn't say I was a good boy. But I just didn't get myself into trouble, you know. So they knew me, a lot of them knew me, yes.
And then when he became head of state, he invited you to work at the castle.
Well, the Air Force posted me to go there.
Oh, it was the Air Force that posted
yes,
you?
Me to go.
So what role would you end up playing there?
We were in the national security. Then an institution was formed, Action Unit. Action Unit was like the policeman over government institutions. We had enough powers to investigate ministers, chief directors, contractors. And Action Unit
principal secretaries,
everybody. We had the power, had the ID card, we gave it the powers. But we had only 4 military officers attached. I represented the Air Force. There was 1 from Navy, 1 from the Army, and 1 from the police. Now, the Action Unit had the main Action Unit, which was based in the castle. Then we had the Complaints Division, which was based in the State House. They dealt with complaints from people, so that you don't come to bother the government machinery. After they go through, and there's a matter that the head of state should know, that he knows. But the way Acheampong ran his government was that instead of appointing so many advisors, deputy ministers and that, we didn't. We had a call of very highly qualified people. If there was an issue to be brought to the notice of the head of state, briefed, it was an economy, that paper was taken and they invited top economists, based them in Accra, if it's going to take a month or two, for them to go through properly and they come out with what should be known by the government. They are paid their hotel bills, they are paid their per diem. So we didn't have to pay them like
consultants
or people working permanently with the ministers. So in this case, the government saved money. And you had a pride to be called to join a team to go and discuss maybe a road from Underbridge to American House. The road experts will look at it and come out with the best solution. Then the secretary for roads and highways will then come and brief the cabinet.
Commissioner then.
Before he comes here, commissioner, before he briefs the cabinet, the same brief would have gone to the head of state. So when the head of state comes in, he is aware of what was going to be discussed. He is not taken by surprise about anything. And therefore, necessary questions were able to put up. So the government that Acheampong had, for the first 4 years, they worked. They worked. There was no corruption issue. They worked. And if you look at within 4 years, look at Teshi and Nungwa, they were separate towns. Now we have Teshi and Nungwa, don't we? We had Dansoman.
You mean building
yes.
The estates?
Yes, building them. We didn't have Adenta and what was it? Look at the estates Acheampong got to be put in the country. Look at Dahuinya irrigation farm. Look at Pong, the second dam. In 4 years, Jesus, Acheampong worked. In 4 years. All this an operation, feed yourself. Have you seen plantain and bananas in people's houses? Accra didn't know you could grow plantain or cocoa. Because what coastal areas know there were forest areas. It was through Operation Feed Yourself. But now people plant things in their own houses, maybe to slice down the housekeeping. All these things should be alluded to Acheampong. It's so sad that governments after Kutu have been killed, no one had found it expedient to honor him. Even with one street or one runabout, and name it Kutu Acheampong runabout.
I mean,
I'm too old to do anything now.
But you are part of
his
government, right?
What can we do? But I believe maybe it hurt the two sides of governments who had come in. Kutu overthrew Buzia. Jerry also killed him. So who will be the one to moot that for what this man did? Even the estates.
You see, you made reference to the first 4 years. Now his last 2 years, first 4 years to 76, and another 2 years to 78. And then
Akuffo
Frederick William Kwesi Akuffo takes him off. But Akuffo was also part of your system.
Akuffo was not in SMC. They were not. But you see,
he was not?
Even up to today, how many government officials or appointees have been labeled as corrupt and gone to court? At the time they took off Kutu Acheampong, he had one estate house in Kumasi. He didn't have any building. Like Kwame Nkrumah, he built estates for the mother Nyaniba. They didn't find money in Kutu Acheampong's account. None of his ministers went to jail.
Yeah, that was somebody's mistake.
Yes. So then what was the reason for have taken him off? And if he's gone off and all this have been realized, they said he gave cars to women. How many cars were coals assembling in Tema? that he gave golf carts to women for
Well, that's just propaganda.
propaganda. So why don't you correct it?
Let me go back. The last 2 years of Kutu Acheampong, what went wrong in your estimation? Because you were working from the castle.
The mistake which happened was that Kutu came out of a policy of union government. And basically, union government was that we are tri-CPP and SAC-CPP. We are SAC-Bozia. So why don't you get together that there will be no partisan politics, okay? And let's elect a unified government to run the country for another 4 years. They were prepared us to forget about all the anguish and things we have in our hearts. Then we'll go back to party politics.
Was he prepared to give up power?
I'm coming down. When this thing was discussed at the castle, I happened to be around. It was said that this is a good idea, but don't get the government involved. Throw it to the let's go for a plebiscite. Don't push the government to get in. Let the Ghanaian decide whether they want it or they don't want it. But at that time, the professionals felt the soldiers had run the country for some period. So they only a rush to also come and run the country. Okay, so they didn't like it. So they were the no group. And Kutu's union government was the yes group. At the end of the plebiscite, the yes group won, but with a very narrow margin. And then they also found ballot boxes like Boku in Labadi and Labadi in Savulugu. So that would have called for a re-election. Plebiscite. Now the fear had come that the way the no support was gaining grounds, if they did it again, the no will win. That was the mistake I thought Acheampong did. But this came about because people pushed him into it. There were times that we went on missions, we came back, and there were cars waiting for us to go and brief the head of state. You go there, and there are about 3 groups in his house. They are all drinking. One group here, one group. You don't even have the time to talk to him.
Speak to the man.
But the man was a good and very kind man.
But was he drinking with them?
Oh, yes, people are come to visit you.
But he was always entertaining people.
Yes. As a result, he didn't have time. His advisor, Joe Appiah, and the rest were there. And they said, please don't let's get involved. Let the country decide. So the idea was that people felt, especially the professionals felt that Acheampong wanted to institute himself now as a civilian president.
Wasn't that the case?
No, he was a military president.
Yes.
But union government would have gone back to party politics. If he wanted to go into politics, he should resign and then go and stand for elections.
You didn't think that he was interested in...
If he was interested, he wouldn't have contested in uniform. If the man had conducted himself a way that Ghanaians liked him, if he left the military and stood as a civilian, he would still have won the election.
Okay, so after that, what happened?
After that, his colleagues...
As a kid, my thinking was that Akuffo was also part of the leadership. Maybe like number 2 man.
The Supreme Military Council.
Yes, SMC.
Akuffo was the commander of the army. There was commander of the Air Force and Navy. They formed that Supreme Military Council. But he has one leader.
Of course.
The leader was Acheampong.
Yeah.
You know, and I think at a certain time his mates also getting maybe either jealous or getting the fact that why him, we also can do it. That's a result for the palace school, where soldiers were now moved to a palace school. He came to the office and they said, resign. That's what happened.
And he resigned?
Of course, they put pressure on you to resign. What can you do?
Okay, so when he resigned, then
Akuffo took over. Then we formed
SMC 2.
Supreme Military Council 2.
With the same team.
The same team, excluding Acheampong.
Okay, and he was put under house arrest, I remember. Also.
Yes, for a period. Bound to his house in Kumasi, off Kumasi. You know. So he was not a threat to anybody anymore.
At this time, were you in particular Still,
I was still in uniform,
still in uniform.
but I've gone back to the Air Force,
Air Force.
headquarters.
Were you unhappy about the happenings as a person?
I'll tell you, it's the most uncomfortable situation I ever met. I was at the Air Force base, a director of administration, when Acheampong was brought in that morning. He was brought in by, I don't want to mention names, you know. They brought in with 3 very senior officers. I think 2 of them are dead now. And I could hear what they were telling him to do, to write his resignation letter, and he was resisting. And they were threatening him. I could hear their voices. Then they left. Occasionally, I used to smoke. Occasionally, you can't towards the part, give me a cigarette. So I sent for about 2 or 3 packs of cigarettes, and within about 1 hour, he had finished it. Not that he smokes it to the end, but you could see he was panicking and uncomfortable. Then eventually, they took him from the office and took him to where the airplanes are. And they tried to push him into a helicopter. That made the other ranks to know that there was a problem. That's the way
What
happened.
would they? What did
They
they
were
want to
taking
achieve?
him to Akuffo, to Nkrumah's villa, under house arrest.
Okay, to leave him there. Did they succeed?
They didn't. They didn't. Eventually, I think he went by road, and eventually was sent to Kumasi. He wasn't put in military guard room or anything. You know. I think he accepted that it's happened, and then that's it.
So he just left and went
Left.
to live his life in
Yes,
Fidiem.
yes, yes.
Did he go to his hometown in
He
Fidiem or
went to
something?
his hometown
Yeah,
between Kumasi
Fidiem,
and Rawlings,
yeah.
yes.
And Akuffo then
Became head of
yes.
state, yes.
And then another year, something else happened. We are still in the Air Force.
Yes, I was.
There was a man called Flight Lieutenant Rawlings who popped up on the scene May 15. Did you know him in the Air Force?
I had known Rawlings, was my junior at motor school. They were called Jerry John, not Rawlings, in school.
With his friend?
Yes, he joined the Air Force. But before Rawlings factor came in, I was fortunate that I used to play squash game with the head of state, Acheampong. Akuffo.
Akuffo.
I used to live in Ringway Estates in Accra, but based at the Air Force base in Accra here. And one afternoon after work, when I was leaving to go home, pick my children at Accra as a king, I was stopped by the station warrant officer. That means the one in charge of the other ranks at the base. So I stopped and said, "Oh, sorry, sir." They mentioned the name of a flight sergeant who was being posted from Accra to Takoradi and was having a send-off party. And he had requested that I should come and chair the party. I sat down in the car for a while and I asked myself a question, why me? I didn't know him. So I said, why me? I don't know, who is he? Then the station warrant officer said, "Sir, I plead, you go and see what is happening." So I decided to go and see or join the party. So I drove there. But when I got to the location, that's warrant officers and sergeant's mess, I didn't see a sign of a party going there. I didn't. But rather they ushered me into a room to wait. So I was sitting in the room reading papers. But they had, what do you call it now? It's like covering the entrance and the main hall.
Okay, like a partition.
A partition. But what surprised me was that I saw soldiers coming from other units. When I saw other units, you can identify them by their lanyard. That this one
You
is
mean
from one
other
battalion.
units of the Air Force?
Not the Air Force, the Ghana Army.
Wow.
Ghana, the military. You were seeing naval, you were seeing soldiers, you were seeing plainclothes soldiers coming in.
To the supposed
party. So I said, wait a minute. How big is this guy to know all these people? Well, I had not been ushered in. So about 30 minutes, I was called in to come in. And once I went in, I found out that they were sitting like when you sit in a classroom waiting for a teacher. They gave me a table where I should sit. I sat there. So my first one, they offered prayers. Then I asked them, what about the party? And one rank got up and said, sir, we wanted to talk to you about an issue. I said, why not? Now, for the next 30 minutes, I was being bombarded by the ranks about the way the officers were treating them. And as a result, they decided to mutiny. Mutiny was that they wanted to take over the units. So the only thing I said was that I acknowledge that some of their complaints were genuine, but they should give me a chance to try and tell the authorities that this was their feeling. With that, they dismissed me. And as I was driving from Burma camp to go to Ring West East, my heart was pounding. Because if that situation arose, the troops have the weapon. The size of the officers will not be being a quarter of the soldiers. They will kill all of us. Anyway, luckily I was called by the head of state, that's General Akuffo, that we should go back and play squash that day. So I went back to play the squash. And normally after squash, we share a bottle of beer each. But I think he realized that I was edgy, because that day he beat me. And I asked him, Patrick, what is wrong? Anything bothering you? I said, congratulations, the opportunity I was looking for. So I told the head of state verbatim where the other ranks were saying, that they want to plan a mutiny or a coup. And they were going to kill officers above the rank of captain. And I could see he was a bit shocked. And asked me whether I reported it to the military intelligence. I said, no, sir. I saw some of them in the meeting. So who were you going to report to?
Anyway, it's getting very interesting. We don't have too much time. We'll take this short break. We'll just take this short break, and then when we come back, we'll see how it panned out, how the coup succeeded, did not succeed, what became of General Akuffo, and then enter Jerry Rawlings and the rest as it happened. We'll be right back.
This is Fact Finder from the BBC.
We live in a world where news travels fast, and sometimes it's hard to differentiate fact from fiction. Fact Finder brings fact-checking from the newsroom up close so you can separate truth from chaff. Be empowered to tell what's fake from what's real. Watch Fact Finder by the BBC on City TV every Wednesday at 6 p.m. City TV. It's your world.
Welcome back. This is Footprint on City TV, and I have Wing Commander Sogbojor. It's interesting. So you told Akuffo about what your encounter with the junior officers.
An impending threat.
Yeah, and did he act?
Well, that same night, I think he asked me that, in my opinion, what would have been the best to stop the action, because I told him the military intelligence were involved. You know, so I said, sir, there was a mistake which came out during Acheampong's time. what had come out was that some officers were posted to civilian organizations. And most of them were officers who were not doing well or had reached the top of their ranks. So to relieve them, to get the younger ones to come up, they were assigned to civilian organizations. But I think the military should have retired them. They lived in barracks. They were working with civilian organizations.
And enjoying.
They were becoming rich. Some of them were sending their soldiers to go and take money, or put money in a bank, or take a car to a girlfriend, or take money to so and so. And most of the soldiers, because the Air Force and Navy can't use our men to do Batman job, but the Army officers had soldiers who were serving them.
Oh,
and when
it was
closed,
different with Air Force and Navy.
Air Force, they are all technicians and trained.
Oh, so
you can't come back and be ironing your clothes for you. So we prefer to use civilians who do that job. But the Army, your Batman follows you even into war. And when they finish in the day, they go back to barracks. So most of the things happening in the various officers' home were being narrated at barracks. So the other ranks were getting angry that the officers were enjoying and they were suffering. So that was the reason for their attempting to mutiny against the officers. But what I said to Akuffo was that if we're able to court-martial a couple of officers, the anger in the soldiers will come down. And he said, this is a good one. But he will go and discuss it with the SMC too. And I was very happy. I had informed the police officer in charge of special branch at that time. But I said, Patrick, wait, let him come back. I didn't hear from him for another 2 weeks. Then he called that we should go back and play. Went back to play the game. And when we finished, I didn't see any sign that that discussion was going to follow as to what his colleagues said. But I was brave enough to ask, sir, what about we discussed the last time? And he said he discussed with his colleagues and they were not happy about it. So that stopped the issue of maybe trying to sober the other ranks. Well, I had a month and a half to leave the country to my staff college in the States.
Okay, you're going on another course.
Yes. And nothing happened, and I left.
Which month did you leave?
I left in 15th of January 1979. So I had discussed this with the head of state between October, November. So I left and I had a course break and flew to Bahamas to spend my holidays. And when I came back, I received letters written by my colleagues in Ghana telling me about May 15th that Jerry struck, but it wasn't successful. 2 nights later, I was called by the commandant who broke the news to me about June 4th.
Had it happened?
It had happened.
Okay.
And we were 2 Ghanaians on the course. But because our president for the foreign officer, they called me to try and find out who he was.
Who Jerry Rawlings
was. The Americans wanted to know that whether it was a socialist intention or democratic. I said no. I don't think has any of the Cold War factions within that. He must have done this on his own. But I think what had happened was that when Rawlings June 4th happened, most of the other ranks felt it was the same man who was singing in their favor. So let's go and support him. And that's what happened.
Now, because of your involvement somewhat in this whole Acheampong, Akuffo regimes, you would definitely be familiar with a lot of the commissioners at the time. Were you?
Yes, I was.
And some of them were your schoolmates, I must
My schoolmate, no. But seniors.
As in not classmates, but people
But
you knew
seniors,
them.
yes.
Yeah. Some of them like
Naval Captain Amedume.
Amedume.
And maybe Boachi didn't come to Achimota, but we were close to him, Air Force Commander.
So you were following proceedings from the U.S.?
Yes. Because fortunately we finished our course about early July. So I moved from Montgomery, Alabama, and went to Washington, where I could get close to the embassy and get what was going on.
All right. And you heard that some of them had been executed?
In fact, that evening I was staying with Kenneth Feli's younger brother,
Wow.
Joe Feli. And we had gone out in the evening, came back, and they brought papers from Ghana. So we were reading graphic, and he felt that the brother had declared his assets. And his asset had goats, pigs, and turkeys and things. He was laughing at the brother. So maybe about midnight we dispersed. I went to my room, he went to his room. And after about 40 minutes, I heard a cry from his room. So I came out. I asked him, what has happened? He said, they've killed my brother. What? They killed him, they shot him at Teshi? I said, yes. So of course we couldn't sleep again, and we got to know what happened. But the wife managed to go to American embassy, and they were able to put a phone call because they had closed all the lines. They called us through their phone to tell us how the husband was shot.
Wow.
So after that, it took us some time to decide whether I wanted to come back to Ghana or not. Because things were chaotic.
The brother too was a military person?
The brother used to be our foreign minister, Colonel Roger Feli.
No, I'm talking about your friend, the person.
No. He was a civilian working United Nations.
Okay.
And I was a friend, so we went there.
So, at which point did you decide to come back?
That was a tug of war. I moved from United States and went to London because London was closer to Ghana. We got more information. But you're
still an officer of the...
Yes, I'll take this demarcation leave or after course leave.
Okay.
I'd applied, they given me 2 weeks. So I moved from Washington and came to London. And I was regular at the High Commission.
High Commission, yeah.
So you could get fresh news.
Who was the military attaché there?
Colonel, he's from the north.
Okay.
Colonel Lurie or somebody. Okay. But I have met Major Silfi and Seidu, who were working in the embassy.
Okay.
So finally, I also realized that we lived in Ringo Estate, so my wife was not in immediate danger.
Okay.
But the way things were going, I decided, look, I want to come home. Because as far as I knew, I had not involved myself in any more feastings. But I'll come. And I got in Ghana, I think 3 weeks before the handover. I reported myself to Arakan, to the head of state, that I've come back.
He knew you personally?
Jerry?
He remembered you?
Oh, Jerry went at Chimote School together. When I was informed 5, I was informed 2.
Okay.
And when he came to the Air Force, we used to give them little tips. He came to my father's fighter squadron, so I knew him very well. When I worked in the castle, the mother was head of the household.
Okay.
And the mother said she was educated in Adan, where I came from. I became like a pet.
Okay.
So I knew Rawlings very well.
Nice. So what happened?
I'm here today. After that...
you never got involved in his government?
No, I did.
I
didn't want... He did. I didn't want to get myself involved in anything.
He wanted you to play a role?
A role, but I said no, I couldn't do it.
So you declined the,
Yes.
the request. And you're not afraid at the time?
You know what? One has to be smart all the time. Most of the bodyguards he had. When I was in charge of the Air Force boxing team, Jerry was my assistant. And most of the bodyguards were the boxers. And they still had loyalty to me. So whatever was going on, sometimes they squealed it out.
Wow, it's been a journey.
Yes.
So now we are just about ending. You are in your mid-70s now, is that correct?
Correct.
When you look back, what do you make of the Ghana that you saw growing up and where we are now?
I think Ghana are deviated after the incursion of the military in civilian government. But if I look back, Nkrumah was overthrown. There were corruption here and there, but we never saw one minister going to jail for any corrupt things. Bozia came in, the same thing happened. So the question, where are we going? If we can take Ghana as our mother, where is the country going? Like you said, I don't have too much time to live. Sometimes I kind of feel sad. And I think we lost an opportunity to put this country back on track.
Under Rawlings?
Well, maybe if deviation didn't come in here and there, and we have followed the track or tried to end up certain things like corruption here and there, I think we would have been back on track.
Is there any hope?
I don't know. I pray if the country has good constitution, have laws, and if the laws will be implemented to the letter. Not because he's my kinsman, he's my friend, but the law you break, he should deal with you. Maybe we can get better.
Wing Commander Patrick Sogbojor, thank you very much for your time.
I thank you too for the opportunity of getting me to speak things which I've kept in my heart for a long time.
Wow, thank you. Now, thank you for joining us. This has been Footprint with Wing Commander Patrick Sogbojor, and my name is Samuel Atamensa. Thanks for watching.